What's going on, guys? Welcome to another Lifestyle of Eden podcast. Today, I have a repeat guest, good friend and mentee of mine, Larry Wilson, or as I like to call him, Lawrence. I'm super glad to be discussing this today. Thank you again, Lawrence, for joining me, bro.
My pleasure, man. Honestly, this is probably one of my favorite pillars to talk about, so I'm really excited to get into it. I think people will leave with a lot of value.
Yeah, I feel like I'm a broken record when it comes to this pillar because this pillar is interesting in that there is almost nothing as a practitioner that you can protocol in order to literally fix it. You can only protocol in regards to maybe band-aiding it a little bit, but to fix it, this is genuinely full-blown lifestyle. Like nutrition, I can write your nutrition to fix that. But here with the second pillar for the audience, we're talking about what I consider the most important pillar out of all of my seven pillars. The only one I would say even competes with it, because I feel like they really do go hand in hand, is my seventh pillar, which is sleep. But this second pillar being community, environmental toxicity, and stress management. And I have noticed this being the most predictive pillar for either somebody that either will get disease, or if they already have it, if they will at all reverse it. So in your experience with this pillar, like what, number one, just having your eyes open to the reality of this pillar, what is it showing you along your journey with all of your clients and everything? But tell me a little bit about your thoughts on this pillar and what you do with it and what you and everything else.
First off, I did pull up a crazy statistic just to set the tone for just how much we need to emphasize this pillar. It basically a meta-analysis found that social isolation increased the risk of premature death by 29%, rivaling and exceeding obesity or even smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So off the
Wow.
bat, we see how powerful community, stress management, those aspects are. But you hit the nail on the head. With clients, we can dive into things with nutrition, body movement, supplementation. And I think a lot of the mindset coaching and then having previous experiences in life from where, hey, maybe we didn't have a great community. And speaking from a place like that can still improve it. But at the end of the day, this has to be something that they encompass into their full lifestyle. It truly can make or break, like we see in the blue zones across the world, or even in my family. My mom, for example, doesn't have the best diet in the world, doesn't necessarily exercise all the time, but amazing community, amazing stress management, has amazing work-life balance, and her health markers and her lab work looks amazing, even though she doesn't
Yeah.
eat 3, 4 times a week and maybe has some cocktails with some girlfriends. It is truly mind-blowing.
What's interesting is that the doctor who wrote Cortisol Connection, he actually says some things on there that, if not understood where he's coming from, can be perverted. I want to preface this. He in no way, shape, or form is saying, hey, go smoke cigarettes, go eat bad food, any of that stuff. But he actually pulls up thorough studies, radical amounts of studies, where they show these people that are eating poor diets and that are smoking cigarettes and doing things that we would just be like on the surface, hey, dude, like that's not good. They have absolutely no health issues of from all of their test subjects that they did on this. The ones who smoked and ate bad food that had any problems at all, they realized that those weren't the roots of the problem, but the gasoline that was pouring on top of the fire from improper cortisol levels and stress management tactics. Whenever these people were stressed with all the cortisol, that's when cigarettes were just exacerbating and killing them. That's when bad food was pushing them into diabetes, all of these different concepts. And so I found it fascinating that the root of even all of those other things that we look at as the problem is really not the root. The root is actually the stress, community, environmental toxicity, and so forth. And you hit the nail on the head in regards to, everybody knows I'm big on the blue zones, and they have their four pillars, all the blue zones. Me, I have my seven,
And
all
let's
of their four.
explain to the viewers what the blue zones are.
Yeah, so the blue zones, this was why I had my apartment in Greece last year. It was in Ikaria, Greece, because it's one of the five blue zones. That, just before we even get into what they are, the five blue zones are Ikaria, Greece, Okinawa, Japan, Loma Linda, California, which is the only one in the United States, Sardinia, Italy, and Nicoya, Costa Rica. And what the blue zones are, there was a scientist, an Italian scientist back in the 90s, that he started wanting to study centurions, which are people that live to be over 100. And so he would find a certain place, and whenever he would find a centurion or like a group of them there, he would put a blue dot on the map. And there were certain places in the world where the blue dots were so blobbed because there were so many, all of them started to run together. And so he would go, I'm going to call this a blue zone. And so he found 5 of them in the world where all of these blue zones, they all live to be over 100 years old, every generation after generation, all over 100, no cancer, no dementia, no disease. And they are doing things in their 90s that we are struggling with in our early 30s. We are struggling. We hit 30 and we're like, oh, I can barely get out of this chair.
Yeah. Can't play basketball with your kids. Can't do.
Dude, they're rock climbing at 98 years old, swimming, doing laps, they're biking for marathons, like they're doing crazy stuff. So we have this lifestyle study that they were doing. And whenever I started coming across this 5 years ago, I started going, oh crap, this is lining up with my 7 pillars. The difference is I found my 7 pillars in the Bible and then proved it with science. They're actually living out the 7 pillars. So I said, okay, I want to get an apartment over there. I want to go watch how this is lived out in real time. And so what's fascinating is that this whole pillar, community, environmental toxicity, stress management, this has always been my Achilles heel. I've always been the health nut, the
I think
workout.
it's most. I think it's most.
100%. I think that this is the one thing that we all as Americans are so bad at. But like you said with your mom and my parents, dude, they are so good at them and their like 8 best friends getting together
Yes.
3 times a week, bro. It is religious for them, bro. Like all the time, going to dinner, having wine out in the front yard, going out and walk, like whatever. They're hanging out like 3, 4, 5 days a week. It is religious for them. And so just before I kick this back to you, what's interesting, the reason that I got caught on this, where I actually found it. So in the Bible, there is, which everybody knows, I always get my stuff in the Bible. There's 3 things in the whole Bible that God commands us to cleave to. The first one, which by the way, simply is mind blowing when we think about what I'm about to say. The first one is Genesis 2:18 through 24. A man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. The second one is Deuteronomy. It's actually the third one. The third one is Deuteronomy 4:4. You shall cleave to the Lord your God. The second one is in Numbers 36, verses 7 and 9. It says, you shall cleave to your community. And so this is where I started finding this, where I go, wait a second, like this is on this, he's using the same word to cleave, davak in Hebrew, for how you shall cleave to your wife and to God. That's how strong you got to cleave to this communal aspect. So I just started looking at the blue zones and looking at the scientific literature and looking at all these things and started realizing all of these different connections in the Bible, including the Proverbs. The Proverbs say, Lev sameach etiv gea. It says, a glad heart or a joyous or rejoicing heart will always be good medicine. Or gea, it means medicine or cure. It means it will always be a good cure. God is giving us secrets to the lifestyle of Eden healing process and disease reversal in the Bible. And so if you look at the people with laughter, lowers cortisol by 30%. Oh, and so it's
I
like
think
this
the thing you
communal.
said to me is like when we see laughter, we don't see disease present. That was something that always stuck to me. And I think regardless if people are faith-based or not, they can take that into account.
100%. I used to always say, I go, tell me how much you laugh, I'll predict your disease.
And it's a crazy thing.
So I got real big on this probably about 7 months ago because I have, many people know this, but I have autism spectrum disorder. So I've always been a very big self-isolator. I like to do stuff alone. I like one-man teams. I don't like groups
And if
naturally.
you don't have a great environment and you don't have a great community, or maybe some of your friends aren't the best, it's going to cause you to be like that. So something I
100%.
had to discover previously is
Sure.
just because one group that you're around isn't fitting your lifestyle goals and community, that doesn't mean it has to be your community. You will find a cool
Sure.
community. And that's where I think like setting the boundaries, setting the things that you really want in life and who you want
Yeah.
to be around is going to be huge. But we all deserve to have that type of community. I really want to dive into and break down what each of these points mean, because obviously
Yeah.
community, environmental toxicity, and then stress management, they're very similar, but they all need to kind of be broken down in different realms.
No, I agree 100%. Let's start with community because community, I was talking to one of my clients. She's a strong believer. And I asked her, I said, hey, how much community are you and your husband having? And she told me, I'm around our Bible study group like 3 times a week. And I said, oh, okay. I said, let me ask you a question here because I'm a pastor and a doctor in the faith. I know how this stuff goes. So I said, I'm going to explain a scenario. Tell me if this is what it's like when y'all gather. She goes, okay. And I said, when you nothing against Bible study groups, nothing against faith group, nothing against that. But I said, if that's what you're saying is your community, I go, when y'all gather 3 times a week, is it y'all praying and then recognizing your sins and the things you do wrong, and then it's like this emotional crying time of venting because of the underlying sins that you're struggling with or whatever? And she was like, wait, yeah. And I said, that's great. You need that in your life. But if you're considering that your community, I'm sorry, you're not getting the healthy benefits of it in the sense of like, it's all this reflection about woe is me and look at the sins of my flesh. I'm like, you need that, but you're not laughing. You're not like, and I told her the example of whenever, because I was living in California when we had this conversation. I said, last week I was with my cousin and his 6 winemaking buddies because my cousin has a vineyard. And I said, we were playing this Italian game bocce for multiple hours, and I was crying in tears laughing for 3 hours because of how like hilarious this game was. I go, that is what's going to bring healing to you. So I said, notice the difference in that community. And
And
she
we
goes,
have so much of that as a child, and I think we lose that as we age. So it's almost keep that childlike curiosity and that
yeah,
like joy that we have as little kids. We're always so laughing, and then
100%.
correlate this to like when we're younger, we're some of the healthiest we've been. And people say it's always age. It's like the bad habits that we talked about last
They
pod.
add up.
It builds up, but
Absolutely.
I think
What
as children, we're curious, we're very joyful, we laugh all the time, we're playing. We're also not germaphobes about everything. We're in the dirt playing around, and there's so
yeah.
much we compare with childhood.
The thing too is I think people can get a little bit too religious when it comes to what does community look like. So for
Mhm.
example, I picked up 2 habits that somebody might go, hey Nick, that's not a good habit. And I go, debatable, debatable. Like my 2 habits, one of the reasons I'm real big into wine drinking is because in California, that became a major method of community for me. Every week, me and my cousin's buddies would get together and we'd be laughing, making wine, drinking wine, blah, blah. And we're not going crazy, but it's a form of community. But the second thing, now that I live in Houston at the high rise I live at, almost every day right now, I'm not saying people need to do this, and I'm not saying I'm going to do this long term, but right now, almost every single day at 5 p.m., me and 5 of the guys that live here, we meet down in the garden and we smoke a cigar, and we're sitting there laughing, just hanging out, this, that, and the other. And it's this form of community that I like. But there could be community anyway. Like my brother, I texted him the other day. I said, Dominic, hey, are you still running a lot? Because he tore his ACL. I said, you still running a lot? He goes, yeah, me and the guys from my church are running 3 times a week. He goes, we run about 8 to 10 miles on Saturday, then 3 to 5 miles twice during the week, blah, blah. And I said, that's incredible. I go, he's running and laughing with his friends for hours and hours a week. Like it's community. And so you've got to find that in different ways. And I have it in many ways. I have it with sometimes with friends where they're coming over this weekend to go to the pool, or we all go to dinner. Like last week, we had 10 of us go to dinner. But you've got to find the different ways of that community. I think that we've complicated that simple essence.
And some of this entrepreneurship and just like the drive to be successful, it's like you can only be around people that are smarter than you in a room. Yes, I like that concept and it's cool and all, but at the same time, you need to have people that you can also just be yourself with. Have
Yeah.
times you don't have to just talk about work and stocks and entrepreneurship in general, where you can just talk about memories, good times, things that make you laugh, or like you said, playing games with each other and go back to
No, for
that.
sure. No, that's 100% right. Keep going.
Yeah, and I really just think where we see some of this emotional isolation, some of these things that drive all the stress up, we're not having outlets to let that out too. And that's where the
Yeah,
community comes in. And you compared it with a faith-based group and things like that is an outlet to some extent, but it doesn't have to be faith-based. Just having somebody you can talk to about the
sure.
emotions, even if they are negative, sometimes getting that out, sitting the emotions and talking to somebody can also be helpful. So although we want to focus on that laughter aspect, we also want to focus on just get out what's on your mind, like having people to talk to. Like we really live in such an isolated state. It's part of the reason why I think the United States in general is struggling so much, quite
Yeah.
honestly. And then I'd like to leave a message with my men's group. Obviously, it is a little bit more faith based, but we do talk about other things. One thing they told me that was pretty helpful is as you're building the community, if you don't know where to start, what helped me a lot was looking up to maybe 5 people I do want to learn and grow from, but also share that community with, and reaching out and trying to pick 5 people to pull me up. But at the same time, finding 5 people that you think you could impact their life that deserve a better community. Like when you start to understand this stuff, reach out and help the other people too. If we all spread this message to community, it all grows. I see so much toxic mindset of just like almost jealousy, where I don't want this other person winning right now because that means I'm going to win less. We have to understand when we all win, it all just upgrades everything.
It compounds. No, 100%. I think that, no, I agree with that for sure. It's one of those things too where like it's not natural to us anymore, community and hanging around people. And we like to just sit at home and do that. I have had to genuinely force myself off the couch
It's
when somebody
easier.
wants to do something
Easier.
because I
Yeah.
don't want to. Naturally, I'm like, nah, screw that, dude. I love being alone. But I know that I'm not laughing. So am I upset when I'm alone? No, but I'm also not inducing the healing qualities that come from laughter that God promises in Proverbs 17:22, nor am I fulfilling the command, you shall cleave to your community. And one of the things that I think is a good way to influence community is find your passion with things and just dive into that. Because one of the things that I have now we have a big group text, a bunch of us, and a handful of them have actually been clients on Lifestyle of Eden and still are. And because Lifestyle of Eden is so encompassing of all life, what's funny was one of the people in there literally went in the group text, changed the title to Lifestyle of Eden. And so Lifestyle of Eden has become like this concept of it, like a community and everything else. And so I think that you just got to find more ways to get around people and allow that to be in ways that maybe are not super, they might be unorthodox. Like I said, I'm a pastor, a doctor, and I run a functional nutrition practice. And one of my main communities is wine and cigars. And that's paradoxical, but that's hypocritical. It's like,
Oh yeah.
it's no, it's not. It's me being okay with getting outside of the box. And here's the thing, where am I going to be healthier? Not doing any of those things and being alone all the time, or doing those things not in over excess while being with community? The latter. I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to be healthier, more
We just talked
longevity.
about how much that can overpower small deteriorations like that.
100%, dude. So I think that's a big part. And I think that the community, one of the biggest things, what's fascinating. Oh man. So there was a study that just came out. And part of the study is one that we've already known, but the other half was the part that blew my mind away because it confirmed everything for me. Was so not only do we know that community and laughter lower your cortisol by 30%, I always tell people, you can't try to not be stressed. The more that you try to sit there in your chair and breathe and calm yourself down, the more that you're just going to be stressed. You can't do that. You have to naturally, as a byproduct, not be that way. How do you do that? When I'm hanging out with friends, I'm not thinking about stress. I'm thinking about what's there. It's natural. You have to make it natural. So that's why I say when people say, hey, infiltrate 2 non-stressful tactics into your life. And I'm like, that's not fixing anything. Like, it's a cool band-aid. It's a cool start maybe, but it's not fixing anything. But the statistic came out that said 4 out of every autoimmune disease, 4 out of every 5 autoimmunes in the US are women. And the reason over 90% of those women have autoimmunes is from isolation and suppressed emotion. And I said, dude, that's incredible, because I have always found with all of my autoimmune cases, including whenever I had my own, they were all isolated, had no community. They were breaking this pillar, environmental toxicity, which we'll get into in a little bit. But all of these things, they have no communal aspects. And I'm like, dude, it is literally life or death that we start to push this pillar.
And you talked about finding your passion, building community around that. I think that's phenomenal too. You've also talked previously about finding partners in life. That, in a way, I believe is super important for us because that helps a lot with isolation as well. But you can find partners, in my mind, a little bit easier and more alignment, as you've hit before, within those communities fueled by passion.
For sure.
Doing similar things. Not if you're not into the club, not meeting somebody in the club, meeting somebody in the gym or running or doing whatever that looks like.
100%. And that's actually so really funny story. This is what I love about podcasts, is that it's not like, for me,
Scripted like that.
I
Yeah.
never framework it. And so what was cool was last week we had 10 people go to this nice restaurant. And actually we got some great footage because Sierra and her sister came out, they were filming.
Yeah, that was fire.
But what was cool was we went out there and everyone's married. There's 5 married couples or 4 or whatever. And then there's me and my buddy Santo. We're the only single ones. So we're sitting at the 2 ends of the table, and they started just getting all up in my business. Hey, Nick, are you dating now? And blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, I've been dating the last couple months, and I've been just going out, and I'll meet women at like wherever, like you said, certain places of my passions. Like I'll meet them at the gym, or who knows, there might be something in regards to fitness or faith-based or whatever, somehow, some way.
Healthy grocery store you pass them with,
Yeah,
know?
exactly. Exactly. And so we were talking about the dating apps. And I told him, I said, I won't get them. I'm not doing dating apps. And the
Respect.
reason I told him why was because I had said, here's the problem with dating apps. I swipe right to agree with them, swipe left to you don't want that person, right? If I'm swiping, I don't know who any of these people are. I am swiping right based on one thing.
Physical looks.
Do I think that you are hot or not? Like, call it. I'm gonna just, you know what? Like I said, like yeah, I'm Pastor Nick, but I'm just gonna put it to you real. That is the
Facts, man.
reality. I'm sorry, but if there's somebody that I genuinely am like, I have no attraction to you, or hey, I have attraction to, or hey, no, you're pretty, but I don't think that you're excessively fine as wine. I'm gonna swipe you left. But here's the problem: most of those women that I would swipe right, I would not get along with on a realistic level. But the ones, 98% of them that I would swipe left, if I hung out with them for 1 hour, I'd be like, I'm all of a sudden radically attracted to you because we blend on so many things. And so that's why I always say, so they were talking about the dating apps, and I said, this is why I disagree with the dating apps. Not saying you can't meet your spouse on them. Half my best friends are married because of them, so no problem there. But I said, for me, it's I want to be able to meet that person in a group of friends because that's how I met people 10 years ago. All of
Mhm.
a sudden, the last 5 years, we don't do that. But that was always the reality of how you were supposed to be meeting people was in that communal aspect. And it's natural, it's organic, it's not feeling forced. You're being able to just get to know and have fun laughter of conversation. Like all of those things are huge. So all the single ladies, or not all the single, all the married ladies that were in the group that they were like, we're going to start bringing our friends around for Santo and Nick. And I said, see, if you bring them in this group and we're all at dinner, we all go here, we're by the pool.
Exactly.
That's natural to me. I don't like the whole set you up in some type of way
Like the
because
blind dates.
it feels too pushed. It feels too pushed. And the dating apps make me feel uncomfortable. So I'm just like, you know what? It's got to be communal. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons why we're having some of
Well,
these
we
issues.
look at the correlations, right? Dating apps are on the increase. Actual metabolic issues, diseases are on the rise, and then we
Yeah.
see the actual community aspect on the lowering. So we connect all these dots and we see it. I bet a lot of those people on the dating apps actually don't have amazing community.
Yeah, no, 100%. Absolutely not. And so this is a huge one. It can't be underestimated. It's something that I drill into my clients every single week is communal aspects. But then the second one with this second pillar is environmental toxicity. And I'm going to be honest with you, even though I started once again, I found this from the Bible. I started seeing how Jesus gave the parable. He gives it in all four gospels, but it's the parable of the sower. And he talks about four seeds that are sown. One sown on hard ground, one sown on good soil, one is sown in a place that has no depths of soil, and one is sowed amongst thorns. And only one of them bear good fruit. The third one is the one that's sown amongst thorns. And so if you plant a good seed, but there's thorns around it to choke it chokes out that seed and it never bears good fruit. So the Lord started showing me this is environmental toxicity around you. And sure, we can correlate that to how we strengthen our relationship with him, but also in everything else. And people always ask me, Nick, how did you get all your illness? I had stage 3 kidney disease, I had fatty liver, I had SIBO, gut dysbiosis, H. pylori, candida, leaky gut. I was facing 2 autoimmune diseases and stage 3 and 4 adrenal insufficiency.
They can all be connected to the seven pillars.
Oh, for sure. And people ask me, when did this happen? And I said, oh, that's easy. The last year of my marriage and my divorce, 100%. That was when everything happened. And I said, I was so stressed and I was in such a, nothing against who my ex-wife is. My ex-wife actually loves the Lord. I actually have a lot of respect for her. So I don't mean this in direction towards her, but just in the situation at the time and where she and I were at and who we were surrounded by and all these other things, environmental toxicity was at an all-time high in my life. And my stress was high, that was high, that was on all these things. So it started bringing me into this. And I started going, man, I feel like environmental toxicity is a big part because we're stressed or being filled with toxic burden that we don't even realize. And what really flipped the script, it was actually right before you came into my mentoring program. There was this woman in California. She's still a client of mine. She's been a client for over a year, and she brought me her daughter, who lives in Arizona. Her daughter's a few years older than me, and her daughter to this day was the worst gut case I've ever encountered, ever.
I've heard this story.
And she worked with me for the first 6 months, and for 4.5 months, we saw no improvement. This girl was so bad, bro. She couldn't eat anything. She couldn't even breathe air. She couldn't drink diet water, dude. Like this girl, bro, I could give her freaking blueberries, green beans, chicken. Doesn't matter. She's either crapping it out in a bad way or she's throwing it up. She was literally, she could barely brush her teeth, right? It was insane. And so I remember I put her through this protocol. I do that. I give her this food. I do this. And I'm like, it's not working. And I had a feeling something of my 7 pillars was off that she wasn't telling me. So her mom confides in me and says, hey, Nick, because she knows I do therapy calls. So she said, I want you to do a therapy call with my daughter. There's something that I think she's not telling you. Like the mom knew, but she didn't want to tell me what it was. She goes, there's something she's not telling you. I said, okay, I'll get on a call with her. So it was after Thanksgiving, the week after Thanksgiving. So over the first week of December, and I was actually invited to Southern California to go stay with her family for Thanksgiving. I ended up not going. So I asked the daughter, I said, hey, I'm so upset that I couldn't get to you guys for Thanksgiving. How was it? She goes, it was awesome. And I said, did you and your boyfriend enjoy it? She goes, oh, yeah, my boyfriend didn't go, but me and my daughter really loved it. And immediately I picked it up. I go, that's weird. I go, you've been dating for like 4 years. I go, why'd your boyfriend not go?
And she enjoyed it without him there.
Yeah. And so she starts going this, that, and the other. And I started asking her, like, hey, is it like a toxic relationship? And she goes, no. And I said, and this is where I love the Lord. The Lord just hit me and gave me a thing to ask her. And I said, so, because her dad is like the greatest dad, greatest husband on the freaking earth. The dude's incredible. So I had said, I want you to get out a piece of paper real quick. She goes, okay. I said, I want you to write down every good trait about your dad, not only as a husband, but also as a father, because she's a mother. So I was like, when compared to your boyfriend, he's got to be a husband and a father. So write all that down right now. So she does it. And let's just say her boyfriend's name was Robert. I said, I want you to write Robert's name next to your dad on every single line that he matches up. And she didn't write his name on one. And
Wow.
she starts
That gives me
crying.
goosebumps.
Bro, she starts crying on the call. And she says, I never realized how toxic my relationship is until you had me write this out. And I said, so and so, listen to me. And I'm also her pastor. She was taking me very seriously. I said, so and so, I'm telling you right now, God will not heal you while you are allowing these thorns to be in your life and you are surrounded with this environmental toxicity. But I said, I'm telling you right now, if you get out of this, you will be healed. It took her about 2 weeks, and then she messages me. She goes, after much prayer, the Lord has just confirmed that I need to do this. Dude, what's crazy was she broke up with him on December 24th. She messages me on December 26th, 2 days later, says, Nick, my bowel movements are normal and I can eat any food that I want. I've never been this healthy in my entire life. It was 2 days later, bro.
Anybody that's had really bad anxiety, man, that does affect how you process food, that how you can actually eat. I felt it myself before.
100%.
I
And so
think that's why all of these are grouped together. Community environmental toxicity are grouped together because yes, that poor community, we hit in the nail on the head on the community, but a poor community is a toxic environment. So you have to be able to recognize, okay, what is this community making me, not necessarily making you do, but what do you have to like status code do you have to uphold for that community? Do you have to be going out to make them happy? Do you have to be upholding certain things that are natively impacting you?
100%.
Just to make the others happy, not yourself. What communities actually bring yourself joy and the others joy?
Absolutely. So that girl's been good ever since. And what's crazy is I find this at the root of every single illness that I have or every single client that I have, because as we're going to get into stress management too, as of 2023, it's actually higher now in 2025, but the study came out in 2023. 93% of the United States of America is metabolically diseased, meaning in some way, shape, or form, metabolism does not work, whether it's mitochondria, gut health, cortisol, hormonal dysfunction, insulin resistance, whatever. In some way, shape, or form, we don't gain muscle, lose fat, have energy, and good sex drive in some way, shape, or form. 93% of America. And so I found this to be at the root of all of it because even their gut issues was due to stress, their cortisol due to stress. These people have no sex life, they have no sex drive. They're 23 years old with testosterone tanked and blah blah blah. They're pushing early menopause. It's crazy. And I go, dude, my second pillar is the biggest predictor of disease. It's more predictive than nutrition. I know people that eat crap food every day and they're healthier than I am. And yet they have the best, but they're honoring that pillar, you know? And community and environmental toxicity, it's just, I can't stress it enough. And there's got to be something that clicks in people for them to have the revelation of just actually how big it is. Otherwise, they're just like, oh, no, yeah, it's important. I'm like, no, you don't get how critical this is. As a practitioner, I can honestly tell you this is the most important thing that I can ever give to somebody is this concept.
I don't know what the science proves, but I really think the nervous system gets connected to that. If we look at a baby and a caregiver, we know there's some sort of connection there. I try to think of that aspect as in how you're friends. I think you even see like girls cycles time up when they're around their community. There's deeper connections with community than I think just the joy aspect. I really does think it lays a role on that nervous system as well.
Absolutely. It's just, here's the thing, even in Psalms 133, it's like the shortest chapter in the whole Bible. It's like 3 verses. And God says, oh, when brethren dwell in unity, how good it is like the oil that comes down on the head of Aaron, down to his beard and onto his garments. Those who dwell in unity will surely be secure. And so the throughout the Bible, like I said, it's one of the 3 things God commands us to cleave to is our community. There's just so much healing essence in that. The problem in the United States is that we're so obsessed with working and making more money and this, that, and the other that we don't have it. In the blue zones, in fact, in Greece and Ikaria, Greece specifically, they don't work to make more money. They work just enough so that they can still go to happy hour every day to hang out with their friends. Every single day they're having that. So that's why I'm like, for me, I only work till on Mondays and Wednesdays, I work till about 2:30. But during Tuesdays and Thursdays, I work till about 12 or 1. And then on Fridays, I work till about 11:30 or 12. And
It's
then
really
Saturday,
hard with this hustle culture. Everyone is so competitive. And we see
dude,
across socials, it's just grind, grind. How early can you wake up? How late can you work?
and
Um,
it's killing people, bro. It's
yeah.
killing. I used to be the same dude. I used to be how early, I already wake up early, but how early can you wake up? But how late can you stay up? How much can blah blah blah? And I'm like, bro, like it just makes no sense. The reality of it is just false. It's
And that's not
based on
even
pride.
freedom. We grind so hard for freedom. And I think freedom is being able to spend time with the community.
It's that whole other concept is based on pride.
Yeah.
Like how early can I wake up? How late can I stay up? How many clients? Like it's based on pride. That's all it's based on. It's based on not having self-worth. And so you feel that's where you're going to get it from the rest of your people or the followers around you. It's completely based on pride,
Mhm.
100%. But the third one that we talk about is the stress management concept, which I know Larry is absolutely convinced that he brought stress management into this second pillar, which there's a chance that he may, there's a chance he may have, although it was always emphasized not maybe in written form. So I think that probably has a lot of truth to it. But yeah, community, environmental toxicity, and stress management. So give a little insight on the stress management.
So they go hand in hand, of course, and that's why these are grouped together. But with stress management, having those outlets, and maybe it is community for some people, maybe it is environmental toxicity, but we have stress in our lives. And stress, I think, for people to understand, is not necessarily a bad thing. With cortisol and a lot of blood markers, we want in that medium range. We don't want things super low. We don't want things super high.
Yeah,
You have to understand, like, it's not a goal of like, how low can we always keep stress? Some stress is normal, but how can we manage it and have these outlets that we can balance it? And you nailed it earlier. Sleep, obviously, super important. And I think you've talked about this in the past, but having that hour in the morning, having that hour in the evening, we can't always control how hectic the day is. And we're
yeah,
all going to have some stress points. That happens. What can you do outside of the stressful points that's going to help mitigate that can actually overpower some of that? And there's understanding maybe even the different types of stress we can talk about and just how even stress, we think of it as like an emotional state, but it really does dive into more of our HPA access and some of
yeah.
our actual production into cortisol and all of our pathways overall.
Yeah, there's 3 main stressors, if you will. You have the chemical, you have the physical, which is like overtraining and all that kind of stuff, and not sleeping, not getting your rest, and then the mental and emotional. All of them are going to trigger a cortisol response, which is the root, in my opinion, of every disease, the root of every autoimmune. It's the root of all these iron deficiencies, anemias, all these things. Because when cortisol gets jacked up, acetylcholine gets jacked up as an androgen, and that literally sparks a plethora of issues. It's the root of most PCOS today. It's the root of all osteoporosis. It's the root of almost
High
all
blood sugars,
high
diabetes.
blood sugar.
That's
It's
all
the
nonsense.
diabetes, osteoporosis, breast cancer, many prostate issues. To me, it's the biggest killer in the United States, hands down. 100% it is. But The thing about stress management that I started noticing, because I started implementing therapy in my practice about a year ago. And what I started noticing with everybody, including myself, in fact, I did a whole podcast on it last year called the best business advice I got in 2024. It was on boundaries. And
Yeah.
I'm so big on boundaries that my dad literally calls me Mr. Boundaries. That's like the nickname he calls me. And the reason being, you got to
Great
see
nick-
it, dude, you got to see it yesterday. Whenever all those clients of mine that were not all, there was like 3 or 4, they were late on their update. And I said, oh, I'm emailing them. Sorry, no update today. When your updates are, like, my job is not to cater to your being late. It's your job to do exactly what's
And
written.
if you didn't do that, that probably wouldn't allow you to actually go have your community time, smoking cigars, having fun. That would tap into that time. And you
And it would
compound that
leave.
over time, and you're just telling yourself you can do that. And the boundaries open,
Exactly.
and then you keep losing that community.
The biggest issue I see with people is a lack of boundaries. It's like, for example, one of my women, she had failed adrenals. She was actually an osteoporosis client. And she's her and her husband, I can't remember, they're probably 65. They take care of her parents. They don't live with them, but they take care of them. And her anxiety has been through the roof for 30 years and real bad, like anxiety attacks and blah, blah, blah. So when we got our cortisol and all these other things, I started saying, hey, I want to have a therapy call. We got into it, started telling me about her parents. And I said, why are you so stressed out? She goes, my parents. And I said, tell me about it. What's going on? She goes, they can reach out to me whenever. They call me at 10 p.m. and something's going on. And I said, they call you at 10 p.m. And I said, was one of them dying at 10 p.m.? And she goes, no. And I said, if you didn't answer the phone, would it have been catastrophic if you waited till the next morning? She goes, no. And I go, stop answering the freaking phone.
That
And I
easy.
said, put your phone after 7 o'clock at night. You are unavailable, period. You're unavailable. They're not dying. They're like 77. No, they're not 77. They're like 80 years old and they're pretty healthy. Like, they're not dying tomorrow. They're not in hospice. They're going to be freaking fine. I started implementing these boundaries for her where I said, hey, listen, before 9 a.m., you don't answer the phone. And not only that, I don't even want you having your phone, because if you see it and they're calling, it's gonna trouble you. I
You
don't even
get
want.
your mind to think about everything on the phone. That's what even if I quickly look at it, my mind's going to think about all the things that start the day and not be
Yeah.
present in the moment.
Dude, we fixed her all of it. And her husband even said, I've never seen my wife in 30 years this calm, Nick, because of the boundaries we put in. I'm always implementing boundaries with people with their work-life balance, with all these different things. And I try to encapsulate that and embody that, because lack of boundaries in some way, shape, or form, whether it's with your in-laws, whether it's with your parents, whether it's with your kids, a big one is with their kids. Kids are getting way in the way of marriages and all these different things. And I'm like, listen, you've got to have your boundaries with kids. You got to have your boundaries with everything, with their sports, with all of this stuff. Because if you don't, it's going to run you dry. It's going to run your stress through the roof. Your work life boundaries, like me, being somebody who I don't go to an office 9 to 5 or whatever, like, I got 2 phones now, the best thing I ever did for my whole practice. And what I do every day at 5 p.m. is I get my business phone and I put it on airplane mode, and it does not get turned back off airplane mode until 8 a.m. the next morning when I come sit at this desk. On the weekends, it's off. All these things. I have such boundaries where I'm just like, it allows me to keep my peace of mind and to have structure and routine and sanity and knowing when I'm working and people can know when I'm available. But to me, the boundaries are the biggest dictator of people's stress.
My big wake up call to actually start enforcing stronger boundaries in myself was with my girlfriend. Nina was like, you're done working at this time, but you're still checking your phone here and there, and you're not actually here with me. Like, I know we're spending 3, 4 hours together, but we're not actually together. Like, you
Yeah.
don't see me. And to hear that as a boyfriend, man, it breaks my heart. But I preach this to clients. It's a wake up call for myself.
Yep.
I really think the boundary whole thing, what I've been trying to work on too, is it kind of gets meticulous, but scheduling things in your Google Calendar helps a lot. Being very strict with your schedule and those boundaries that you set. And then just at the task at hand, being extremely present at that task. If it's work time, be present on work. Don't think about the other stuff. When it's time for community, it's time for relationships, be present in that moment and chop
Yeah.
it off. Like, it's hard for our brains to not balance everything. If we
Right.
can have it more, a little more organized with the boundaries, like you said, and then just be present to each task in hand, that's going to help this so much.
100%. What I learned a year ago was that anybody who a master boundary setter is a master business scaler. I remember last year when it was the beginning of the year and the Lord asked me, if I brought you 100 clients tomorrow, what would you do? And I remember I told the Lord, it was like January, February. I said, don't do it. I said, do not. I go, I would lose my freaking mind. I go, Lord, you do it. I will literally lose my crap because I didn't have boundaries to take care of 100 people. I don't freaking lost it. Whereas now I have 100 clients and that's fine. I'm doing a lot of stuff because I have boundaries. But the thing is, I started noticing the more boundaries I set in, the more I scaled. And the more I scaled, the more boundaries I set in. And I'm continually putting in these different things more and more. And the more I do it, the more at peace and organized and categorized my life becomes. I'm not DMing people all the time and doing this
And
and
you're going to do a better job at work. You're going to show up better for the clients because you're not,
100%.
you know,
100%.
that. I think in any workforce, your deliverables are going to be exceeding your potential when you do lock that in.
Absolutely. And you've got to be able to have the three things I noticed when it came to stress management. It was the boundaries. That was the biggest one always. It was not doing the work you should be doing. Like, for example, if I'm being lazy and I'm pushing something off till tomorrow, I know I'm going to get stressed out. It's going to bother me. It's going to accumulate and this, that, and the other. So the first one is not doing what you should be doing. Because then if I'm not doing what I should be doing, I might worry about these clients leaving me or whatever. And I'm like, that's going to stress me out. But that's me not doing what I should be doing. The second thing is after you do what you should be doing, worrying about the outcome of the things that you can't control. The second biggest thing, I used to teach people, hey, if things go good, let it go good. If they go bad, who cares? Let them go bad. And then
Yeah, go ahead.
the third one was boundaries. It was those three major things when it came to stress management.
I think a lot of time we create these scenarios and these stories in our head that aren't even true. Sometimes we may think, oh, we're going to lose these clients if we don't reply. I'm going to lose this friend if I don't show up to this, whatever it may look like. And you're telling yourself a story that's not even true, and you're reinforcing that negative mindset.
I think a very practical thing when it comes to boundaries too is like, for example, I remember a year ago, I didn't have the boundaries I have now. And so clients I would always say, hey guys, can you please send me your updates by 9 a.m. on whatever update day there was? And most of them would, but then some of them would send them at 3 or 4 p.m. And I remember I'd be like out of the office I'd be somewhere else. And I'd realize, oh, they just sent me an update and I'd be freaking out because I'm like, oh crap, now I got to figure out how to do this, that, and the other. It would stress me out. So
That
now,
was just me. That was just me a couple weeks ago before I had that wake up call.
yeah, dude. So now it's like, hey, you know what? Like they sent it to me at noon. I have no stress because it's in my contracts. Number one, like you signed a contract that says you'll send it to me by 9. It's in your actual weekly update that says, hey, make sure you send this to me by 9. And now
We're
everything is
living
just
this example to them too. We're living this
exactly
example. If we're preaching this stuff, we also have to showcase it. We have to showcase these boundaries so that they put the boundaries in their life.
100%. And like I said, the biggest one I think it's work-life balance and it's their kids, man. I'm telling you, these people, it's so easy to succumb to the issues in those areas, but you've got to have these boundaries with work because the autoimmunes that I see, every single one that gets fixed up are the ones that fix this. The ones who fix their cortisol are the ones who fix this. The ones who don't, their immunes stay high, their autoimmunes stay high, their Hashis stay high, their cortisol stays jacked up, and so forth. We were just meant to live a life of boundaries. And you want to know actually what triggered me, once again, a Bible thing that triggered me a year ago of why I started implementing boundaries. Man, the Holy Spirit just hit me one day last year and showed me how God spent the book of Numbers, chapter 34. The whole chapter is actually on one thing. It's when I bring you into this promised land, these are your boundaries. And if you read that chapter, it is radically explicit detail about all of the boundary markers for north, east, south, and west for the land of Israel. And then also the boundaries of the things they can or cannot do when they're living in it. And the Lord said, if I spent an entire chapter dedicating it to the boundaries for the lifestyle of Israel, don't you think you should spend an entire chapter of your life dedicating boundaries to yours so that you can be fruitful in the promised land? And I was like, dude, absolutely. So that's why I'm so big on boundaries too, is because that concept, I was like, man, God is giving us the lifestyle concepts all throughout the scripture. If we will just read it and fill ourselves with community that like talk about these things and think about these things, we could have so much easier, so much more successful, smoother, more peaceful and fruitful lives if we would just go back to the lifestyle of the Garden of Eden. It's the lifestyle of Eden. That's what my business is, what my whole concept is.
So a lot of these are amazing lifestyle changes we're telling people. What are some things that you think just little techniques, whether it's grounding or breath work, what are some things you've utilized in clients that have seen success with while they're working through setting these boundaries, building the community in the process of working through some of these larger lifestyle ones? What little tactics and trips do we have for the audience for that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the number one thing I always hyper focus on is their sleep concepts. Is hey, we've got to go to the sleep. We've got to figure out why you're not sleeping and those different types of things because that's going to be the biggest thing, in my opinion, for this. Because if you don't sleep, cortisol automatically rises. You get anxiety, you get this, that, and the other. But the other thing too is I like to induce certain like I really work on them for, hey, how to find more community. I give them examples of maybe, hey, this is how we can find it, whatever it is. But with that said, too, I generally will have them do some form of just like walking or something.
Outside.
Even,
I think nature is huge here.
yeah, getting outside. I don't like them walking on a treadmill. I like them going outside, walk amongst the city, walk in the woods. I don't care. Just doing something like that. It is a very parasympathetically calming concept. The
The
other
rest
thing,
digest state, just to emphasize,
exactly.
you're able to process the food. We talked earlier about a woman not digesting properly. When you're in that constant stressful state, it does impact all of those processes.
For sure. And that's why I'm also big on chiropractic too. Chiropractic triggers the vagus nerve. It's literally what's responsible for being flexible between parasympathetic and sympathetic dominance in the nervous system. So those are the big things. But the things that I really teach all practitioners to do is I say, hey, you have to invest in your clients. Every single cortisol case I get, every single one, there's not one I don't do this with. I have them book a consultation call with me after I get their cortisol results and after I get their Dutches and all that because my whole point is I want to know why your cortisol is jacked up. Because depending on why, it's going to tell me not only what I'm going to do to fix it, but how long I think it's going to fix. Some people, their cortisol is just jacked up because they've been under eating and overtraining for too long, but they're not stressed out at all. They just have physically driven themselves in. Oh, I'm not going to protocol this at all. I'm just going to
Which
rest you.
we talked about the different types of stress, right? Physical is an aspect of that. So you guys always need to think about all these different buckets,
100%.
good types of stress that might be feel like they're relieving your stress. If we have a bucket here, it's still adding into that stress bucket. And when that stress
100%.
overflows, we're going to see the negatives.
Yeah. The other ones too, I'll give you an example, like just literally one I just had yesterday, right? So she's a newer client and we've been working together for a month and a half and we're fixing up a lot of stuff right now. She's doing fantastic, but her adrenals, bro, she was flat out stage 4, like just flatlined underneath the canopy, just tanked, bro. And so I told her, I said, hey, book a call with me. We need to talk about this. So we get on the call and I said, I want to know what is causing the stress because this didn't happen in 6 months. This is years of adding up. So I go, share with me what's going on. And she's actually from Panama. She lives here now in Houston, but she's from Panama. And she said, my mom died whenever I was very young. She was like 10 years old, something like that, 12 years old. And she said, my dad lived in the United States. So I was raised with my grandmother, and my grandma was so old and not doing well I was always terrified growing up. I was in this fight or flight mode because I could have been an orphan at any moment because my grandma could have just died. She was super old, super sick. I had no support. Like that was it. And so I said, so you really are coming from a very unstable background. And she goes, very. And so she goes, every day the joke is in my house, I wake up wondering what can go wrong today. And so I said, okay, we have serious trauma. So I spent 45 minutes ministering to her on the trauma. And then now one of the things that we have her doing is we have her going back to the therapist that she said she used to love, but then she just randomly stopped going. I said, no, we need to go back to that. So we're diving deep into that so we can fix that thought process so she's not always living in this fight or flight sympathetic dominant state. Because I told her, you will not heal. You will not heal if we don't get to the root of this. And so we have to work on this. So I think the difference between what I do and a lot of other people do is the fact that, am I always the answer to how she's going to get that healing? No. But if it wasn't for me and my practice, she wouldn't be facing it and knowing what to do now. So I just dive a little deeper with my clients. And some of them I go, hey, we need to do therapy. Ones I just had earlier this week on Monday, they're a married couple that work with me. And both of them have told me individually that they have some toxicity in the home amongst their marriage. And so I had told them after individual calls, I said, the next call we have needs to be together. So we had this call together, and bro, it was unfreaking believable. Like they loved it. We introduced these different concepts of where the stress was coming from. It had to do with boundaries with their kids, missing each other on communication, where like he would say something and she would say something and they're just not catching it together. And so I was able to mediate that. And they messaged me the next day. They go, that call changed their life. And so everyone's a little bit different. And so that's why I just think you've got to dive deeper in that and be able to see, okay, how are we going to go about fixing this? Because going on the parasympathetic walks or the chiropractic, those can be cool, but if that's missing what this person is needing, it's not going to do anything. So we have to be able to go a little deeper. And I just don't think that most practitioners are willing to actually go that extra mile. And for me, I am.
And something worth emphasizing, notice, guys, we're not talking about different herbal supplements and things that are just going to be band-aids to push different levels of what we need to do here. We're talking about lifestyle changes. The
Yeah.
supplements, everything, we're looking for a quick fix, the quick dopamine, the quick fix. Some of this stuff is going to take some time.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And the thing is, then we'll use the herbal protocols or the
Enhance.
adaptogenic concepts to help hasten the recovery of X, Y, or Z. But the thing is, until you fix that, I always tell people the way that I look at it, they go, "Oh, write me a protocol." And I'm like, "No, not until we like not until we start fixing this." Listen, writing a protocol without fixing my 7 pillars of lifestyle is not brushing your teeth, but chewing spearmint gum.
Yeah.
Someone
Yeah.
say, "Hey, I'm not gonna brush my teeth, but I'll just have the spearmint gum every time." Okay, that spearmint gum is going to help for the first 2 days, and then eventually it's just gonna get so bad because you're not brushing your teeth,
Yeah.
bro. It's just a band-aid, and it's costing you more money and more stress to have to go buy all that gum than it is just to simply take care of the lifestyle aspect and brush your teeth. It's the same way with my 7 pillars. None of these other protocols, none of the Ozempics, none of the semaglutides, none of the adaptogenic protocols, none of the multivitamins, none of the gut protocols, none of that matters if you don't fix my 7 pillars. But if you fix my 7 pillars, all of those things can help be a very beneficial band aid for a period of time
Yep.
while we want to get the short term and the long term results. The problem is most people don't confront the 7 pillars because most coaches are not taking the time to invest in the knowledge of those 7 pillars and to pinpoint it for each client individually.
Yep. And I think that's the highlight of this is seriously diving in. Working with a coach is far beyond just training nutrition. I think that's the takeaway for here for a lot of people is this has to
100%.
encompass the overall pillars. It has to encompass the lifestyle. It has to go down to the root of who you are, how you feel.
No, 100%. Like even today, oh no, like last night we, me and the guys, we're so diligent now on, oh no, you know what? We were talking last night about Medicare and Medicaid. It was a very fired up conversation, but it was a good one. One of the guys in our group, he's a professor. And we started talking about was college beneficial or whatever. And then he brought up the statistics of we can say, oh no, you shouldn't go to college. But he brought up a good point. I didn't go to college. I dropped out of high school. But he had said the statistics say that the ones who do go to college end up making more money and be more successful. And I go, he said, Nick, he went down the list of all of us. He said, name how many people you know that didn't go to college that are making 150K or more a year. And I sat there and go, dude, very few freaking people. I go, I can barely name any right now. I go, outside of myself, like I can't really name hardly anybody. And then he goes, exactly. Like we have some of those people that are just one-offs, but the statistics show people that go to college end up making more money. And I was like, no, that's a good point. That is generally the rule. There's exceptions to the rule, but that is the rule. The thing that he had mentioned was he had brought up the question. He goes, who do you think lives longer, teachers or plumbers? And I spoke up immediately and I said, I don't know this statistically, but I said, I'm willing to bet every dollar in my pocket teachers
Dang.
by a long shot. And he goes, you're 100% right. And then he keeps going. And then I go, no, let's go back. I go, I want to know why. I go, do you know why? And he goes, I don't know why. I just know it's true. And I go, oh, I bet I can tell you why. And I said, because those teachers are around other people 24/7. They are in constant community. A plumber is always by himself. Now, granted, a plumber's having to deal with crap all day, literally. But but but
Environmental
dude,
toxicity.
they are laughing and with kids and having a good time or whatever. They're just constantly around people. In the midst of their classes, they're talking to the teachers next to them. They're constantly around people. And he says that the average plumber is dying around 55 to 65 years old or getting diseased by then. And teachers are living way longer. And I go, bro, I mean, you can find this all throughout. But like I said, the blue zones and all these other things, case studies, cortisol case studies, the facts are there. community, environmental toxicity, and stress management, it literally is the difference between your cortisol by up to 50%.
Well, I know my favorite reason for college, and it goes along with that. When I went to college, the biggest thing I think I got took away with it wasn't education, wasn't professors or any of that stuff that helped me excel in my future career. And then even now, it was the people I met, it was the community I made, and it was the connections I made that I learned from, that I bonded with, and everything else.
Yeah,
It wasn't the test and the curriculum that I learned, it was the people and the network and the mentors. I've learned more from mentors, good friends, about myself and about other things more than I have in any
100%.
classroom.
100%, dude. Absolutely. I think that we've had a pretty full gambit on
Yeah.
this, and at least brought revelation or an unveiling to the reality and importance and the weightiness of this pillar. Because I think a lot of people, we're ignorant of the reality of this pillar, number one. But also, like I said, the statistics show just laughing induce or lowers your cortisol by 30% and does all these different concepts. This to me, I say it as one that I believe I praise the Lord for it, but I do believe I have one of the most prestigious practices in the United States of America, if not the world. And I can honestly say, as that founder and head practitioner, that to me, apart from maybe sleep, which we'll get to on our seventh pillar, this is the most important and predictive pillar for disease, reversal thereof, prevention thereof, and reversing weight loss resistance. It is hands down, because this pillar, if you're stressed, you have all those things. Did you know that there is nothing on this earth that develops more oxidative damage in the body than stress? It's the number one form of oxidative damage. And I'm just like, that's the root of every autoimmune disease. That's the root of all senescent cells. That's the root of all insulin resistance. That's the root of all hormone resistance. That's the root of every thyroid issue not converting into T3. It's the root of all of it.
It's one of the main things that they connected when researching the blue zones too. There were different diets across all these areas, and that's not even something we talked about. But one thing they found about all these areas and these people living the century lived lives,
Yeah.
it was community.
Community, dude, I'm telling you, it is so magnificently key, bro. It's insane. No, this is good, man. I know the audience is going to really enjoy this one. And once again, dude, I'm really glad that you got to join with me on this. And I'm excited that here, God willing, next week, we'll be able to step into the third pillar, body movement, which I think will be very enlightening, because it's not what everybody thinks it is, going to the gym and all of that. But nevertheless, I do not want to take away from just the weightiness and importance of this pillar, man. So thank you, Larry, once again for joining me, bro.
It's an honor. This message has got to be heard.
Oh man, dude. Thank you guys, and thank you, Lifestyle of Eden community. I hope that you enjoy this episode and stay tuned for the next one.
Thank you guys.